Yeah, that's what Councilman Hudson just said.
Mic check, mic check, mic check.
No, he's got one though.
No.
He's gonna bring it a handout.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Hello, Lee.
Morning, everybody. I'd like to call the Prosperity and Livability Committee to order. I believe we do have a quorum. I'll call the roll. I am Wesley Hudson, Chair. I'm present here at City Hall. Michael Holmes, are you with us?
I'm here, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Jefferson, are you with us?
I'm here, Chairman Hudson.
Thank you, sir. And Monica Peters, are you with us? Do not see her on the roll. Monica Peters, are you with us? We do have a quorum, so we will go ahead and get started. Our first presentation is the Community Ready Project, and I'll call on Patrick Harmon and Mary Sizemore, who are here with us today to make a presentation to us.
All right.
Floor is yours, Dr. Harmon.
All right. Thank you, Councilman Hudson. I'm Patrick Harmon with the Hayden Harmon Foundation. Just wanted to talk real briefly about the community read that's going to be starting next month. This is an idea that Mary Sizemore and I have been cooking up for a while. Got interrupted by COVID because we were planning on doing this a while ago. This is really, I came to Mary Sizemore in January 2020 because there's like an empathy deficit in this country. And I found this book called Trust First, which I think can help us address that empathy deficit, particularly in our country, because if we don't address this deficit, we're going to be in a dark place in our country. And so I wanted to have a community read that really galvanized people into action. That's what's going to be happening starting in July, and Mary will talk about the specifics. But the book is called Trust First. It's a story about Bruce Deal, about an organization he created in Atlanta called the City of Refuge. He's a pastor, but he was sent to Atlanta to actually close this church and end up creating this enormous organization that works with folks experiencing homelessness. And so it's kind of a one-stop shop to get people back to self-sufficiency. So there's mental health and physical health and transitional housing and all kinds of different stuff. And so they've successfully worked with over 20,000 people over the past decade or so, making this happen in Atlanta. It's a very inspirational book. I know we're talking about the day shelter in High Point, but it's much bigger than that. And it's really about having radical trust, and not just regular trust, but serious trust, even when people don't deserve the trust, that you can have a big impact in the community. And so that's what the community read is about. And then Mr. Deal is going to come on September 14th to the city, do a keynote, but it's not a finale for the community read. It's really a call to action, what this is all about. There's another group in town called Resilience High Point. That's a foundation initiative, and it's working to kind of create a network of support for families in the community. We're going to be introducing the Compassion Charter September 14th, which is really a call to get engaged in your community and see others as you would like to be seen, and really get people engaged civically and making High Point the best place in the world. And so we'll introduce that concept on that day and hopefully get people to sign up. And so that's what the community read is all about. I hope you guys can join, encourage city staff to do that as well. I know Mary's dropped off the book to the city council members and the city manager office. But I'll have Mary come up here and talk about specifics.
Good morning. Patrick is right. This is not a typical community read where we do things, the author comes and it's all wonderful and that's the end of it. Actually, as he said, the author coming, we hope, is just the beginning. So the things that we're going to be doing leading up to the author coming in September are activities to hopefully lay the groundwork for what happens after this whole project is over. So this is what we're going to do. On Saturday, January the 24th, from 9 to 1 is our kickoff, and that will be held in conjunction with the farmers market at the library. So we'll be giving away copies of the book. We'll have some interactive activities. We'll pass out a schedule of events, and we'll have something called our Trust First bingo card, which we're working on right now, but it's a series of things that people can do throughout the month of August and September that engender opportunities for being kind and trusting other people, and sort of stepping outside and meeting people that we may not ordinarily do. And everything is designed to provide suggestions for just really simple acts of kindness and trust. So, you know, people want to help, they want to do good, but when they see the enormity of the problems around them, they get frustrated and they just don't do anything. So these little simple things that everybody can do is what we're going to concentrate on. In the month of August, on August 28th, from 10 to 11, there will be a community leader panel discussion at the library. It'll be in person, but it'll also be live streamed. But it's going to be people who are already involved in serving people in a very trusting way, and to talk about how radical trust can transform people and communities. And then on September 14th, Bruce Deal will come to High Point. He'll meet with some community leaders early in the day, and then at 7 o'clock at the museum, he'll talk about his book. And hopefully that will be the impetus. People will sign the charter, and we'll move on to be a better High Point. So thank you for your interest in this, and hope everybody reads the book. You said you already read it, so.
My wife and I are both avid readers, and I finished it in about 2 days. It's a very easy read, great information. He's a very good writer.
Yeah, he is.
Easy to read it. And if you didn't catch, we do have copies for any, if you have an organization that you would like to give this book to and have the members read it, just contact Ms. Sizemore at the library, and she'll get those copies out to you.
Yeah, we bought 500 copies. We also have e-audiobooks and e-books in the library collection for people who prefer that format.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Any of our remote members have questions for Dr. Harmon or Ms. Sizemore?
I don't have any questions, but I just want to say, great job, Patrick.
Absolutely. Glad to have you here, Ms. Peters.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? If not, thank you all so much for the presentation. It's a great book. I look forward to seeing the great things that come out of that. Our next item is part of the Washington Street Cultural Center, and we have an update from Ms. Phyllis Bridges.
Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Take this off. Yeah, I just wanted to, other than touch base with the progress that the city has made on their side for us, coming up with a agreement solution to the land. I went back to do some additional research on the land because I was just curious as to what was on that site previously. And in my research, I found out that there was a small community there. That was part of the African-American community on the far end of Washington Street. So I sent a PowerPoint to the committee members about a month ago, just so you could be aware of that history that was there and is no longer there. And, it has not been replaced with anything to help enhance, benefit, revitalize that area. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention.
Okay. Thank you so much. Do any of our remote members have questions, comments? No? If not, thank you. Thank you for the work that you're doing on this as well. It's
Okay.
exciting.
Okay.
Exciting stuff.
So is there any updates from the city, how we move forward on this?
Well, I think the way we left it last time, that the committee was going to take it under advisement. I don't know that anything further has been officially done. I think the committee needs to discuss what the next steps are. If you wish to move forward, certainly the committee can only make a recommendation to the city council at this point, and I don't know whether any fundraising has started yet on the cultural center or not, but I would think that would be part of the criteria moving forward, that I don't think the city can just turn over the land with the hopes that something would be done. I think you can make some kind of the city can make some kind of commitment that if certain things were done, then the land would be made available. I don't remember the exact amounts, but the city only controls part of the land. The rest is owned by the Housing Authority, and I don't know if you've had any conversations with them yet or not. I have talked a little bit with the director about it, but no action has been taken yet.
Okay.
Chairman Hudson, this is Councilman Jefferson. So I actually want to speak up about that. I recall, and we actually have to check the minutes, because the minutes, I think, has the most accurate record. But I recall us having a discussion in which we were asking staff to actually come back with some information for the committee. And part of that, I think, would have been baked into doing some research, some record pooling maybe. I do recall some of the information that the committee wanted to know on that day, essentially before the committee can make a decision to convey any property, doing sort of the due diligence that's been done in the past, what's been the precedent for us to convey property, what sort of information do we generally seek, what sort of steps do we normally go through. And I think Manager McCaslin, Madam Clerk, can pull those minutes to speak specifically to what was asked that day by this committee when the motion was made for us to take this under consideration. And so that would actually be the information that we'd hopefully want to get an update on before our committee could really do any further deliberation. I think we need more knowledge. And I know these past 2 months we've been busy with budget and a number of other things. And so perhaps more time's needed on staff's side to pull those records and do some of that research that we talked about on that day. And then perhaps it's something that we can reconvene about in our next P&L meeting. But I certainly recall that the ball, if I remember, because I think I made the recommendation myself, actually, that the motion that is that we would ask staff to pull some of those records so that way we can know what's been our precedent for conveying property, what sort of information do we need to know, what research should be done, what are the steps that we would ask of the applicant or the requester, that is Phyllis Bridges in this case for the cultural center. What's the information that we would want her to have? What sort of steps would we want her to take? Essentially, at this point, we're flying in the dark, and I think the only way for us to truly find a guide star on this is to look back at precedent and do some of that research, pull some of those records. So when we've conveyed land, what typically are the considerations that we're taking into account, and what sort of information needs to be had? Does that make sense, Manager McCaslin?
Yes, we can certainly do that research. We will do so and get back to the committee. I'm at this point, I'm drawing a blank as to what other properties we may have donated in the recent past. But we'll go back and do some research and see what we can find.
Phyllis, Ms. Bridges, this is Councilman Holmes. Question for you. Manager McCaslin stated that fundraising, he was unsure if fundraising had taken place. If memory serves me correctly, I think in our last P&L meeting, you were saying that fundraising, that your donors' commitment to the project was contingent upon the transference of land from the city. Is that correct?
That's correct. There is money on the tables. One of the key potential donors has not made a financial commitment and would rather us have ownership of the property before they make that commitment. But I have 2 key donors who are ready to commit to this project. But until I obtain the land, I can't move too much. That was going to be the kickoff for our capital campaign.
Manager McCaslin, question. If the criteria for the transference of land, if some of that is a capital campaign, could we do this? If Ms. Bridges could secure, say, a written commitment to the fact that the donors would be financially committed to the project contingent upon the transfer of land, would that be sufficient for us to make a deliberation on whether or not we could actually make the transfer? Would that serve in lieu of an actual capital campaign or funds available, considering the circumstances as they are now?
I'm not sure whether or not legal is on the call. I believe they might be, and if they want to weigh in, that's great. But I think the criteria is up to the city council as to just what they wish to have in place prior to the transfer of land.
Yeah, good morning. It's Joanne, City Attorney. Councilman Jefferson kind of nailed it a while ago. It is, based on what I do believe was his motion at the last meeting. It just needs more investigation, needs more terms that we can actually rely on and things that we can plug into a contract with regards to the financing. The city staff, manager's office, et cetera, will need to weigh the value to the city and the value of the land And that is sort of the thing that we always do when we look at donating property, and especially, for a public purpose. And in this case too, we would need to kind of lock in by contract some of the terms relating to the possible financing in case that fell through, which we all hope that it doesn't, but it would be protecting the city just in case something didn't, pan out.
Joanne, this is Councilman Holmes. If that's the case, couldn't we write into the language that if there was a kind of a moratorium period on it, that if nothing took place or financing fell through, that the land transfers back to the city? Is that something that's legally possible for us to do?
Yes, sir, that's definitely possible. We can put some clawback language in there. The deed that will go out regardless will always have a clause that's required by statute that says the property will revert back to the city in the event it is not used for a public purpose. Since we're going to have some extra terms in whatever agreement we have up front on this, we can include some of the reference to that as well.
Thank you. I think just, and maybe we're just inadvertently spitballing terms here as we're discussing, but I think it's been a while, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, Ms. Bridges, this was earlier in the spring that you came to us with this request.
Yes,
and I think,
it was back in April.
Back in April. So I think, and I understand budget and everything, but as a citizen, this was a request back in the spring, and I think we need to put some due diligence on this to meet the needs of our citizens. So if we can, I don't know, Mr. Chairman, this is a recommendation or a motion necessary here, or Madam Attorney, for us?
Councilman Holmes, I'll jump in and say the motion was made the last time we heard this, and the motion was made that covered everything that we literally just talked about. So everything about looking up the research and pulling records on clauses, clawbacks, and contingencies, and all the stuff around potential, requests that we would make of Ms. Bridges, and all of that was included in that motion. We just haven't had that information pulled by staff yet. And so to your point that you just raised just now, Ms. Bridges came to us in April. I mentioned the point about the budget, but you're absolutely right. At this point, we need to put, I think, a little more steam behind it, because if she's got folks who are waiting to hear about this, I mean, money doesn't sit still all day. I do know that at the state level, that she's got some supporters who are wanting to find a way to support this. But I think it's some of the same thing. They're saying, hey, we want to support it, but let's also ensure that there's local support and city support as well. And so if as a city, if we can do our very least to do our due diligence, so that way she can go and run, then at the very least, we get to see what all options are out there. If we're going to ask that she have some of those letters with some of those commitments brought in, then let's say that. But if we feel like we need to make sure we're pulling and looking at the precedent on this to do that, let's do that as well. I would actually go further to say that we already made that motion, Chairman Hudson. I think at this point, it's just putting a timeline on when staff will actually get that information back to this committee. I'd love for us, I don't know if we have a P&L committee meeting scheduled for July. I know a lot of folks take July off, but I'd be willing to do a meeting in July just so we can ensure we go ahead and hear what that information is on some of those records that's pulled, researched, so we can go ahead and be talking at least through what's what. And that way we can say, while cities continuing to work on stuff, what is it that Ms. Bridges could be working on her end, so that way the ball keeps moving.
Chairman Hudson, perhaps I could recommend that procedurally, you just request that Madam Clerk enter into the minutes that you guys received an update today, that motion from Councilmember Jefferson remains on the table and there's more work to do.
Is that acceptable to you for the minutes? I think that's a great idea, and I apologize that we haven't gotten this to you sooner. We will work on it. Are you available for a July 7th?
I sure am.
Is that enough time for the city to come back with some information? Is that enough time for legal to come back with some information?
We'll do our best.
Okay.
Same here.
All right. Yeah, I think contingency clause and all of that, I think we need to understand reversion clauses and all of that. Benchmarks, timeline, all of those absolutely need to be set down. So let's put this on the agenda for July 7th, and we'll continue discussion then. Thank you for coming today.
Okay, thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Y'all have a good day.
Are there any more questions before we move on?
No, I'd just like to make a comment, if I may, Chairman Hudson. Yes, that was my understanding as well. I was expecting for this meeting for us to be receiving that information so that we could act on it. So disappointing, but I know it's been busy with the budget, and so looking forward to July 7th.
Yes. Great, thank you. Thank you.
All right.
Any other comments? Thank you, Ms. Bridges. We'll see you in July.
All right, thank you
Continue
so
this
much.
conversation. Let's move on to, we have a discussion about recreational vehicle ordinances that are in place and possibly doing some revisions to those. And coming to the mic is Lee Burnett to start our discussions off.
Right here, right? Yeah.
Give us an update of what the ordinances are currently.
Yes, and Councilman Jones, do you want to offer any initial comments while I'm sort of setting up here?
Not yet.
Yeah, it should be. No?
I was going to let Lee go ahead and speak, and then I'll weigh in if needed.
That's the RV stuff.
That'll be fine. Thank you.
It's on Teams. I thought he had one.
Pulling up some information for a presentation.
I'm too old for this. There we go. Okay, good deal. Thanks, Rod. Good morning. Apologize for the delay getting this loaded up. Manager's office asked us to take a look at the RV park provision or lack of RV park provision that's in the city's development ordinance. To give you a little bit of background, and I think I talked a little bit about this a couple months ago, the city's current ordinance does not have a provision for recreational vehicle parks. That includes any kind of camper, trailer, pull trailer, that type of thing. The city did have some standards back in the prior ordinance up until the new ordinance was adopted in 2017. Had a number of standards that it was allowed in a couple of zoning districts. One required a special use permit. So looking at the current environment as to what jurisdictions are doing, we surveyed and looked at the top 20 cities in North Carolina as well as our neighboring jurisdictions to see how they what standards they put forth, how they regulated, what zones they allow recreational vehicle parks. Most allow in some type of commercial zone, and then some do allow in their rural or agricultural zoning district, particularly if they have some kind of environmental attraction, if you will, a lake, a park, whatever, that type of thing. So, High Point's environmental attraction is basically Ocala Lake. The city owns all the property around it. There's really not an opportunity for any commercial recreational vehicle park around Ocala Lake. Any RV park that's done around Ocala Lake will be done by the city. So, more than likely, if any kind of recreational vehicle park would be developed in High Point, it would be in a commercial zoning district. What we're finding is that they're typically located just like a hotel. They're along commercial corridors. near interchanges with interstates, that type of thing, where people can park, can stay a day, a two, a week, or whatever their itinerary allows. But it typically is in a commercial area and not in, say, an industrial zone or a residential zone or that type of thing. So what we put together was, after looking at the surrounding jurisdictions as well as some of the other jurisdictions in the state, we put together some standards to look at in terms of a potential text amendment. As you can see here, the suggestion is to classify it as a commercial use and be part of our visitor accommodation standards or uses. There's a definition there. Basically, a recreational vehicle park is basically 2 or more RV sites or camping spaces. This can include tent camping and the like, so there's no restriction on the type of camping that could be provided. And then there's a typical standard definition. This aligns with the state building code in terms of a recreational vehicle. Basically, it's a vehicle that's designed as temporary living quarters for recreation, camping, or travel use, whether it's on its own power, whether it's towed, whether it's mounted, etc. And it does give some examples of the typical types of trailers or campers that would be involved. It does clearly indicate that it's not a manufactured home, which is defined by our ordinance. Again, the recommendation or suggestion is to allow it in the city's general business zone. This is typically where we have commercial land zoned or able to be zoned along the city's major commercial corridors, near interchanges and the like. The use standards are qualifications. These are standards that you want to put forth. The two options is to, again, have it as a permitted use or a principal use that's allowed by right without any kind of board approval, and the other option is to do it as a special use permit. I recommend against a special use permit if you can have standards that basically protect and ensure that it's done properly. You don't need that type of review, and with a special use, as we've talked about before, the council or whoever the approval body is has very limited discretion in saying no to it. So if you can come up with standards, we recommend not using the special use permit process. And being that it would be in a commercial zone, most of the jurisdictions we surveyed did not use special use permits in a commercial zone district. But the qualifiers would be recommended to be a minimum of 3 acres, a maximum of 15 spaces per acre. The prior ordinance got into the regulation of size of RV spaces. I would suggest against that. It's probably best to have standards that deal with the perimeter of the site and its impact on adjoining properties rather than regulate the size of a space, an RV space, because there is a mix, whether it's a tent camping site, whether it's a fifth wheel, whether it's a travel trailer, whether it's an RV, you have a variety of different typical sizes for those. And that's probably something that's best left to the operator of the business. Setbacks, again, this is sort of dealing with the perimeter. Basically, the district standards would apply with regards to any kind of buildings, and there would be a 50-foot perimeter setback for any kind of RV or camping spaces. Basically, typically with an RV space or camping space, you're going to have people outside the camper, you're going to have picnic areas, you're going to have some recreational areas and that type of thing. Typical standards are that the RV sites must be designated on the ground. You need to know where those spaces are. They're marked with markers or monuments and the like, and they must be located above the base flood elevation. We don't want to allow any kind of structure like a camper in a flood area. So that's a very typical standard that you find in most jurisdictions. Whoops. And then you want to have some minimal standards with regards to the improvement of the space and any kind of drive to get to the space on the site. So this would require asphalt, concrete, gravel, or some other kind of approved comparable all-weather surface. You don't want to have grass. It becomes a mud hole. Then you have soil erosion issues and things of that nature. So again, the space would have to meet those standards, as well as any kind of park drive internally to the site would have to have some kind of all-weather surface. Access, You want to have access through a driveway into the site. You don't want to have any kind of RV that basically pulls in directly from a public street. So you want to have that internal access and that internal circulation on site, and not direct access to an RV site from a public street. Utilities, most places require public water and hookup for the park. You could have individual hookups or a sewage dumping station. That means either basically the spaces could be individually hooked up, or you could have a collective sewage dumping station on the site that deals with this. Since we're talking about allowing these inside the city limits, typically and our ordinance requires most uses to have public water and sewer hookup rather than well and septic tank. Central structure required for toilet and bathing. Basically a bathhouse or some ability to provide sanitary services. And then because it is temporary, most jurisdictions limit the length of stay. Even the city limits the length of stay at Oak Hollow RV Park. So it basically would be a standard. You can't use it as a permanent dwelling. That's prohibited by the building code. And it limits the stay within 90 days in any 12-month period. So these are, like I say, sort of reasonable standards we found that other jurisdictions were using. They can be a lot more complex, but I wouldn't suggest going much further from that.
90 consecutive days or 90 total days?
90 total days. So, you know, in any 12-month period. So it's a rolling calendar place. So that basically is, you know, it's basically so that somebody just doesn't have one sitting out there for an extended period of time living in it. That's what you don't want to have, is somebody using this as a permanent dwelling site.
It still would not be allowed in residential areas anyway.
Exactly. I know, talking with the building inspector here, where he came from before, they had problems with that, where people in a coastal area would want to live there year-round, and they had to deal with that issue. I don't think we would have that issue here, but you still want to have some ability to address it in case there is a violation of it. So those are the standards. If the committee is interested in sponsoring this, we can address it through, we're working right now on some general amendments that we will more than likely present to the Planning and Zoning Commission in August. And so that's the next available agenda. And so we could add this. It would be about 5 or maybe 6 places that we would have to amend the ordinance to address this through definitions and use standards and the like. But it's fairly straightforward.
Okay. Anyone have any questions for Mr. Burnett? If not,
okay.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
I'll call Melody Burnett. Burnett and Burnett.
We'll get up there for you.
Thank you to this committee for allowing me to speak today on behalf of the visitor economy. I'm Melody Burnett with Visit High Point. I'm switching gears from meeting and convention mode to now leisure traveler mode. We do have the Miss North Carolina pageant in town, so please allow me to address my notes with some stats that would be really complementary to the drafted ordinance that Lee was just referring to. You know, number one, just based off of COVID, we all have a neighbor or a friend that is engaged in the new fun world of camping and RVing, and I've put together some stats from the North American Camping Report, as well as our friends at Destination Analyst. There's over 86 million travelers that identify themselves as camping enthusiasts. It's grown from 15% since 2015. It's not just COVID, this is an increasing trend. How that relates to our local Oak Hollow campground, they have increased their usage by 13% from 2019 to 2020. Currently in High Point, Oak Hollow Lake Campground is our only opportunity in High Point. We do have 2 in Greensboro, several in Asheboro, 1 in Salisbury, and 1 in Advance. So due to our location just here off the interstate, being a transient destination for leisure travelers, going to Myrtle Beach or Asheville, there's a lot of opportunity for High Point. The average campground visitor takes a trip of 14 days per person, and they are enhancing their vacation stays by 4 weeks. Families are the #1 growing campground demographic, as they were surveyed this year, with an increase of 64% that will take increased visits with their new or used RV. 60% of campers are non-white groups, so this is a very diverse leisure traveler that's emerging. Young professionals are taking more weekday trips with RVs mixing leisure and work. 54% are bringing their laptops with them while on vacation. RV sales are up 12% since 2019. More folks who are camping are buying used first, which is a great opportunity for our do-it-yourselfers to explore renovation and custom design. Users are valuing technologies and are finding camping amenities on more apps as we are looking for more online presence.
This meeting is being recorded.
For High Point. Yeah, thanks for that. 46% of travelers are bringing their pets. So if you have a dog, this is a great opportunity for campers. And of course, COVID last year escalated all of those trends, but we don't think that the trend will stop just in 2020, as now we are reprioritizing our values as our work-life balance has changed, our connection with outdoor recreation has changed, as well as our mental and physical health. You know, currently we have 42 parks and recreation opportunities in our city. Our local Parks and Rec team does a fantastic job. And in order for them to focus on our enhanced amenities at City Lake Park, their brand new master plan, as well as enhancements to our greenway, this would be a great enhancement to make these updates with our RV ordinance. Campers spend an average of $600 per trip. That is considerably less than our typical meeting and convention traveler. However, it's just a new way to engage with a different audience. You never know when that camper can turn into someone doing business here or living here. And it's just a great complement to our mission as we position High Point as a great place to live, work, and stay and play. So if you all have any questions regarding opportunity with demographics, I'll be glad to entertain those.
Thank you. Anyone remote have any questions or comments for Ms. Burnett?
Yes, Chairman Hudson, this is Councilman Holmes. Melody, thank you for that information. I think adding another layer of accessibility to the city is always a good thing. So hopefully we can find a way to maximize this new normal that we're in. And I love the fact that you spoke to people reprioritizing post-COVID, reassessing work-life balance, and how they just approach travel and tourism. So thank you for this information.
I would also like to note that RV camp opportunities do not levy occupancy tax, just in case you needed to know that. That is for hotel, lodging, motel, and short-term home rentals and Airbnb and VRBO.
Mr. Chairman, this is Councilman Jones, if I may.
Yeah, go ahead, please.
I want to say thank you to Melody for your presentation. We started this conversation probably 7 months ago. High Point, as everybody knows, is uniquely positioned with all the highways for a lot of transient travelers. And me, as the serve on the board of the Convention Visitors Center and as the treasurer of the Guilford County Hotel Association, we've seen this trend, and I always want High Point to be in the most competitive position for any tourism, traveling, commerce, anything. And in the RV community, High Point is known as a place that's always full. And I think there may be some amazing opportunity for tourism revenue to come into High Point, whether they're coming specifically to go to High Point or to stop to break up their trip along the way to north or south or whatever. And I would hope that this text amendment may lead to some other amenities opening up in High Point to make us more competitive in that space. So, Melody, thank you for your presentation. Great information, and I'll yield it back to you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilman Jones. Any further comments? If not, then I'll make a motion that we give this back to staff with a recommendation that they come back for a full council presentation once they go through the planning and zoning.
Second.
The committee wants to recommend the
Okay, then I'll amend my motion to accept this recommendation and further it to the Planning and Zoning Board. That good? Yes. Is that acceptable for the second?
Yes.
Chairman, if, I apologize, let me interrupt. Lee, has Megan taken a look at this, do you know?
I'm sorry, Joanne, I did not hear that question.
Yes, has legal reviewed this? Has Megan taken a look at this already?
No, this is a typical text amendment that we would put through, so it would go, it hasn't even gone through the process yet. We haven't drafted it yet.
Okay, well, if you would, just please work with her on this. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Sure.
Any further comments? If not, there is a motion and a second on the floor. If there's no further discussion, I will call for the vote. Councilmember Holmes, how do you vote?
Aye.
Councilmember Jefferson?
Aye.
Councilmember Peters?
Aye.
Chairman votes aye as well, so it's unanimously passed. Thank you for your presentation today. Good stuff coming across. Does anyone have anything further? If not, if there's no objection to adjourning, we will do so, and summarily we are adjourned.